as well. And basically now I'm at Oxford studying biomedical sciences, and so I'm obviously in my first year. And I just thought I'd jump on here and just let you know some kind of pieces of advice that I think would probably have been useful to hear in when I was in your position. And I mean, some of it you've probably already heard, but I mean, other parts you might not have. So in terms of Oxford, obviously, well, not just Oxford, but Cambridge and other top universities as well. You're probably aware that getting the top grades is kind of not expected. Well, it is expected, but it's not. That's not just top grades and you're in. You know, there's lots of other parts to an application. So for kind of Oxford, Cambridge, and I think maybe Imperial, and I know definitely for place for medicine, you have to do obviously an admissions test, and that's normally after you've sent in your application. So it's worth bearing in mind with places like Oxbridge, the deadline is 15th of October. So obviously it's kind of a lot earlier than everything else. So I'd probably suggest, if you're thinking about applying or kind of have that in the back of your mind, just think about it over the summer in terms of your application, or start drafting a personal statement earlier rather than later, because as soon as you get into second year, everything sort of hits you at once, and it's definitely kind of easy to just, you know, let it drop off and kind of rush at the end, and you obviously don't want to be rushing. So yeah, you have your admissions test in around October, November time. And I'd probably suggest, in terms of, no matter what the admissions test is, making sure you do like past questions and things. I had to do the BMAT, which I know medicine students at some places have to do as well. But I mean, if you just look up online, there'll be past papers for lots of different subjects. So I just suggest, you know, taking the time maybe over the half-term holiday, or you know, an evening here and there, just to go over past papers, because it's worth just being as prepared as you can. And then after the admissions test, I think you get your results sort of a couple of weeks afterwards. Then you'll either be invited to interview or not. And so that's why I say it's worth preparing properly, because kind of it's not the be all and end all, the admissions test, because I'm sure you've all got brilliant GCSEs, but it's definitely a factor in your application. So if you can prepare well, then that's a bonus. And then in terms of the interview, I think mine was around December time, and just key pieces of advice I'd say is just thinking out loud. So I know it's kind of easier said than done, but like obviously you can do practice interviews in college, or you know, find a teacher who you're doing your subject, so it might be like biology, for example, and just see if they wouldn't mind just spending 10-15 minutes at some point at lunchtime, whenever, just doing a practice interview with you, because it's just kind of getting used to talking about things out loud, and that's really useful. And then in terms of kind of extra things you can do for your application, because all of that everybody has to do, but where you can obviously stand out, which I'm sure you already know, is like doing your personal statement, and kind of everything you include on that. Whilst I mean, things like Duke of Edinburgh, and kind of extracurriculars that you might do outside of college, they are useful. It's worth bearing in mind that places like Oxford and Cambridge and other like top universities are very interested in kind of what they call supercurricular, which are basically extracurriculars, but that are related to your subject. So for example, I was very interested in science and scientific research. So in the summer between my year 12 and year 13, I did this placement at Southampton University. And I mean, if that's something you're interested in, or just science in general, it may be worth just, you know, sending a few emails to a lab, or a few different labs that you're interested in, and just, you know, even just shadowing for a week or a couple of weeks, you know, just things like that. It's just kind of makes your application stand out. And then other things in college, so like student council I was involved in, and things like that just show lots of different skills. So you're communicating with other people, and all of those skills are just useful in life generally, but also on your application. And then student ambassador. I was involved. I was a student ambassador for the college, and then the extended project qualification. I'm not sure what the situation is with doing that, but I did one of those, and basically it's if you're not aware, it's basically where you do an independent kind of research project where you do the reading and you write a report, and it's kind of good preparation for university, but it's also a chance to kind of go beyond the A-level syllabus in a topic area that is interesting to you. And I'd say that that's kind of something, it's an opportunity to say, well, I've researched this, I've gone beyond the A-level syllabus, and you're showing that you have that real passion for the subject. And then if you've got any like part-time jobs and things like that, then that's kind of useful to put on there as well. And then I mean, other than that, I'd just say give it your best shot. I mean, thing is with university applications, you never know. You can do all of these things and still not get in. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's luck of the draw, because all of these things kind of increase your luck, as you could say, but it's kind of everything kind of comes together. So it's not one thing's more important than the other. It's just giving it your best shot on everything that you can, and that's what you can do basically. So yeah, so I'm happy to take any questions that people have, or any comments, or you know, anything they'd like me to elaborate on. Or if you want to put it in the chat, I don't mind.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat and see if anything turns up there as well. I mean, whilst they're thinking about questions, at what point did you decide that you wanted to apply to Oxford or Cambridge?
I think it was maybe like year 10, because I think we did a school trip, or maybe year 11 actually, a school trip from my secondary school to Oxford, and just sort of seeing everything and being in the city, and like that in itself was kind of amazing. But just like learning about how Oxford system works, and you know, speaking with academics, that it just was quite inspiring is maybe a bit too dramatized, but maybe yeah, I'd probably say year 11 or so. But I didn't properly start thinking about it until year 12, when applications were due, because it's one of those things where you kind of think about it and you kind of don't think, oh, I couldn't do that, but obviously, like being part of the Aspire program and things like that, that was kind of when I really started to think, oh, maybe, you know, maybe I can give this a go. So yeah.
Can you see that question there?
Oh.
There's a question in the chat from Nora. It says, do you think that the application process would undergo any changes, since most of us cannot take much extracurricular activities due to COVID?
I think it's an interesting question. I'm not 100% sure, because I mean, I'm not sure how they're doing the admissions sort of. I know last year with the application process, they did the interviews virtually, which they hadn't done before, and I spoke with one of my tutors, and she said that worked just as well as normal, you know, normal times. In terms of extracurriculars, I mean, yeah, I guess it's a tough one in terms of not being able to kind of do as much in person as perhaps you would, but maybe I'd say sort of go online if there's something that you were like particularly interested in, or I mean, extracurriculars, they're not the be all and end all. I mean, there's other things that you could do, like extra reading around your subject, and go kind of reading stuff that's not on the A-level syllabus, and you can do that like online at home. So you know, there's other ways around it. Yeah, I mean, definitely see what's online, but I'd say don't kind of rule it out as, oh, I haven't been involved in XYZ, so I'm, you know, not going to bother. There's definitely other things that you can do. Try and think out, like, I know it's a bit stupid to say that I think outside the box, but yeah, I mean, the extended project qualification, if that's still running, like, I'd definitely say go for that. And I mean, that's kind of not extracurricular in itself, but it's kind of showing the skills that you would get from something like an extracurricular. So there's definitely other ways around it, so I wouldn't worry too much.
Okay, I mean, I would also add that because it's when you have online sessions, universities can accept more people to an online session than they could to a face-to-face summer school. So in many ways, it's potentially increased the quantity of opportunities available, even if the quality of them isn't quite the same.
Yeah, no, exactly, definitely. And also remember, everybody's in the same boat, you know, everyone who's applying and going for these kind of universities, they're all going to be, you know, same shoes. Like COVID's affected everybody, so don't feel that, you know, other people are going to have loads more than you, because it's kind of, you know, negatively impacted all of us.
Yeah, right. There's lots of questions appearing in the chat now.
I can't actually see the chat.
I'll read, no,
okay.
I think that's because you're a guest. It's one of
right.
the anomalies of the system. I'll read them out for you. Don't
okay.
worry. So Bridget asks, is it necessary to have specific? Sorry, is it necessary? Start again. Is it necessary to have knowledge of the specific structure of the course you want to do? And also, do you need to bring anything in particular to your interview?
I'd say definitely go on like the university website and the course that you're applying to, and just kind of familiarize yourself with how it's structured. I mean, I wouldn't say you need to know, oh, in second term we're going to be learning this, in third term, you know, I wouldn't say that. I'd just kind of maybe look at the course overview on the website and just familiarize yourself, and kind of, if you know that they kind of, you can take optional modules in the second year, then that's great. And maybe you might want to pinpoint a couple of days. I remember in my interview I did get asked, why did you want to come to Oxford, and what is it about the course that appeals to you? So in terms of that kind of question, like, it's worth sort of knowing maybe areas that's listed on the website, like whether that be, I don't know, biochemistry or physiology, or, you know, different things like that. Just one or two things that you can just kind of pull out and say, oh, well, I looked at this and I was really interested in that, and I like that that's an optional module. So I wouldn't say you need to know everything in detail, but just maybe like one or two things from the course. In terms of taking anything to an interview, I think I took a pen and some paper, but they had everything there, so don't worry too much. You don't need to take anything. No. Does that help?
Hopefully. The trouble is I'm struggling to keep up and down to see whether people are making comments on your comments.
That's fine.
I'm trying to keep where I am in the question list.
Yeah, go on then. Next
one. So next question is from Thomas, and he says, did you join, and do you think it's necessary to join summer schools for the universities? Apart from the experience you'll get at those universities, are there any benefits coming along?
So I did do the Unique summer school, which is the one that's run by Oxford. I'd say it's definitely useful. Like, it's kind of, it gives you that taster of a university experience and what it's like. And particularly if say, for example, no one in your family had been to university, or you just didn't really have kind of any idea of what university is like, then it's definitely useful in that respect. I wouldn't say that it's definitely necessary. Like, it's something that you can put down, but I wouldn't say, oh, you know, it's a deciding factor between one student and another. It's just something else that can build into your application. So I'd say if you have the opportunity, definitely go for it, but don't worry too much if not.
Okay, right. Next question is from Isabel. And it says, what advice would you have for choosing a highly selective university if your subject choice is not offered widely, e.g. a more creative subject, so it may not be reflected in the league tables? So I'm guessing what she's saying is that, I'm assuming that she wants to study a subject that isn't widely available, and she's struggling to choose which universities to go to.
Okay. I mean, taking that from a more broad perspective, in terms of like choosing a university or selecting a few universities that you're interested in, there's definitely like different factors that you might want to consider in terms of, like, does the course align with your interests? So obviously, if it's more of a niche subject, then hopefully you would have already narrowed that down already. But other things like the location and how the course is structured and how the teaching is delivered, is it mainly big lectures? Is it smaller classes? How is it assessed? Is it all coursework? Is it more exam based? And things like that. So there's definitely like different other factors that you can consider. I'm not 100% like familiar with like more niche subjects, only because science is definitely like more widely offered, but I'd say definitely start there, and maybe like as well your any of your teachers who perhaps teach you in that subject, they might be able to advise you further as well, or the like careers service as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing, is like, particularly if it is a slightly more a less widely available subject, then your subject teachers are probably likely to have a bit of an idea as to which are the good universities to go to.
Yeah.
I like this next question. It's from Mary, because it was sort of similar to the question that I was going to ask if there were no other questions, which is, Mary asks, did you always know you wanted to study biomedical science? And sort of my extra bit to that is, of course, I know from experience of having dealt with a lot of students applying through UCAS that biomedical science is often the 5th choice for people that really want to go to medical school. So how did you make them aware that actually this was your first choice subject and not your backup, just in case you couldn't get into medical school?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting question. In year 12, at the beginning I thought I was going to do medicine. I had kind of had my head set on that. Medicine, fine, good. I set up work experience at Southampton Hospital, so I did some volunteering, and after kind of a couple of months of doing that, no, medicine was not for me. I decided, based on that, having that experience and being in the wards and being around ill people, that actually that environment, I just didn't enjoy it, and that what I was really enjoying and why I'd wanted to do medicine wasn't that patient interaction. It was the science kind of underlying it, and that's kind of what biomedical sciences encompasses. It's the science of medicine. So yeah, I've done some kind of, so what I would say in answer to your question is do some kind of volunteering, or maybe some like work experience that might help you differentiate between, for example, like medicine, biomedical sciences. And then how did they know my application? It was like what I wanted to do. I obviously did my research experience at Southampton, and so things like that, that's just kind of, you're tailoring it to the biomedical science, of course, then the patient medicine interaction. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Lovely. Now this time it's Isabella, and she's asking, how do you make your personal statement unique and stand out?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd say don't expect it to be perfect on your first draft. I think I went through about 7 drafts, maybe. I've lost count, to be honest. But what I would say is with your personal statement, kind of, it's very easy to follow the pattern of, oh, well, I've done this here and I've done that there, and that's fine, but you don't want it to turn into a, oh, well, I've done this, because that can kind of, it sounds more like a list rather than a personal statement of saying, oh, I'm really interested in this, and this is kind of some evidence for it. So maybe what I'd say is kind of start early with your personal statement, so you have enough time to go over it. And then in terms of making it unique, just kind of including anything that you've done that's kind of different from what everyone else has done. Because I mean, doing your A levels, everyone would have done those A levels for that course. So it's all the extra things that you can add on. So like the extracurriculars and part-time jobs and the extra reading that you might have done, and kind of if there's something that you're really interested in within your subject. So I think I said I was really interested in cell biology or cancer or something along those lines. So I kind of funneled into that and said, oh, well, I'm really interested in this, and kind of made it quite specific. And in that way, you're kind of not keeping it general. You want to be, any point that you make, you want to kind of back it up with some kind of evidence. So, you know, if you've said, oh, I'm really good at communicating with others, well, what evidence do you have for that? Well, you've been part of student council, or you know, so just kind of adding in detail where you can, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's obviously very good advice, because some of the less interesting personal statements that I read are like you say. They say, well, I've really enjoyed what I've done so far in A levels, and I would just like the opportunity to learn more. And it doesn't really show that you've put much effort into, well, what more do you want to find out?
Yeah.
You've got to show that you've done something yourself to give yourself that level of interest that makes you want to study more things, but also have some idea of what particular things you're interested in those subject areas. And you don't need to worry that you might choose a subject area that actually isn't a speciality of that university, because they're not going to say, well, no, don't come here because we don't do that sort of part of the topic. They're going to say, well, you know, you're obviously really interested in finding out more about this subject. Have you thought about studying in this area instead? So I don't think you ever need to try and second guess what they're going to want you to say. I think it's more important to say what you want to say, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Right now, Neve asks, do you have any tips for remembering all the terminology for subjects like biology?
I would say make sure before you try and learn definitions and things like that, you actually understand the content, because there's no use in kind of rote learning. Well, there's some things you do need to rote learn, but on the whole, you want to make sure you understand it, and if it's kind of a process or a step-by-step mechanism or whatever, you know, like that, I would say make sure you understand the kind of reasoning and the why. And if you're not sure on that, I would say speak to your teachers first, and then after you've kind of made sure you've understood the content, then I'd say things like flashcards are really useful. And then after you've kind of mastered your flashcards, I'd go and look at past papers, and you know, that's related to that area within those definitions, and then I'd just do some questions on it just to solidify that. But I mean, it's just kind of just going over it and over it.
Okay. Now, Jemima asks, did you talk about your EPQ at your interview? Is it worth doing, or are there other ways to demonstrate research skills?
I don't think I spoke about it in my interview, to be honest. No, I didn't speak about it in my interview. Do I think it's necessary? I mean, it's definitely, I did it because I really wanted to kind of have the opportunity to learn about something that wasn't offered in A level. So I looked at nutrition, and that wasn't really part of the biology course. So it was an opportunity in that respect, because I was just genuinely interested. In terms of demonstrating research skills, it's definitely a good way of doing that. There's obviously other ways you could maybe do that. I mean, if there's any like competitions or like essay competitions online, or even just in your own time, like if there's something that you're really interested in, just go away and you know, read some articles on it, or you know, make a few notes and just kind of keep that in a folder somewhere. And then when it comes to doing your personal statement, you can say, well, I've done some online research on this topic because I found it really interesting, and you know, there's definitely other ways to do it. So I wouldn't say you'd have to do an EPQ, but I did it because I just really enjoyed it. But obviously there's other ways of doing so.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I see a lot of students that start EPQs, and then once they get their offers from their universities and the university doesn't mention EPQ in their offer, they say, oh, I'm too busy to finish it now. And I think that's a shame. I think really that the important thing is don't do an EPQ just because you think it's going to give you lower offer grades at university. You do an EPQ because A, you want to do it and it's a subject area you want to study, and B, because you're going to see it through to the end and it's going to be another qualification. The highest dropout rate is from students that do them because they think they should, and because they think it's going to get them a lower university offer. And sometimes it does, but very rarely do I see any students that actually get into university by having to use the EPQ grade that they got. So I don't think that is a good reason for doing an EPQ. It's got to be because it's something you're interested in.
Yeah, definitely.
Lottie asks, how did you choose your top 5 universities? For example, how do you choose between two top universities for your first and second choices? Maybe if I answer that one a little bit first, Lottie, is that when you've got your top 5 choices, what you really want to be doing is maybe picking two sort of like I would call them aspirational choices, two good choices that you are going to manage easily or should manage, and then an insurance one, a lower level one, just in case things don't go to plan. Because at the end, you don't choose between two top universities for your first and second choice. You'll have a first choice, which is the one you really want to go to, and your second choice is actually your insurance choice, which you're sure you're going to get the grades for. So you do end up only having a firm and an insurance. So you want to make sure that in the 5 that you choose, you get a bit of a spread of expected offer grades, so that when the time comes, hopefully you've got your top choice make you an offer and you go there as your first choice, but then you have another one a bit lower down that you can take as your insurance, just in case. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Catherine.
No, I think you've summed that up quite well. In terms of like, if you're looking at like Oxford and Cambridge, if you're like not aware, you can only apply to Oxford or Cambridge. You can't apply to both, so it's just worth bearing that in mind as an extra thing as well.
Oh, scrolled the wrong way. Molly asks, do you have any advice for choosing courses if there are a few very different pathways that interest you? I have to say, again, maybe if I start this one off again for you, Catherine, I have had people want to go to 2 different universities and study quite different courses, and the difficulty is always writing the personal statement, because you only get one personal statement, and if the courses are wildly different, writing a personal statement that covers both of them can be difficult, if not impossible. We did have one last year, or maybe even the year before, where the courses seemed to be very, very different, but the student was able to explain in their personal statement how their interests linked their 2 possible career choices, or not they had a career choice, but 2 possible university routes to achieve it. And so they basically said that whichever one of those that they did as their the education part of their course, they would still follow up the other one as well, so that the 2 parts of their 2-pronged approach to their career would still be possible, regardless of which subject they ended up taking at university. Because of course the universities don't know who else you've applied to and what other courses you've applied for. So all they see is your application for your course. And if they see a personal statement which clearly doesn't match the subject you've chosen to study at their university, they're just going to reject it. So you have to be very clever in how you write your personal statement. So that was who was asking that? That was Molly, wasn't it? Yes. So you're in my tutor, Molly. Have a chat with me in tutor next time about if that's a problem you think you're going to face, and we'll have to come up with a clever way of you writing a personal statement that covers your different pathways.
Yeah, I would just say what Mary said. You summed up quite well.
Lottie says, how easy is it to change your course once you've started, i.e. maybe within a department of the same university?
I'd say like it's probably dependent on the university. I know for like my subject, or like for where I'm studying, like not many people really change courses, only just because once you're accepted on that, it's kind of, I know some people can change it, and it's probably more done on a case-by-case basis. I know for some universities, so for example like Southampton and a lot of other universities that offer like biology and biomedical sciences and biochemistry, it's worth having a look on the website, because some universities will have a kind of broad first year where everyone will study the same content in terms of whether you're biology or whether you're biomedical, or whether, you know, so, and I'm sure that probably applies for other subjects as well. So it's probably worth having a look at that, because I know, for example, if you started on the biology, I think there's ways of then after your first year you could then say, well, I'm actually going to switch and do, I don't know, ecology or biomedical science after the first year. So it's definitely just probably done on a more university by university basis, and then also a case by case basis as well. So I'd say have a look at the university website and see in terms of on your specific kind of course, and perhaps if there was other ones you were thinking about, just having a look at the how they structure it. But it's probably, yeah, like I say, more a case by case basis.
Yeah, that's I think that's definitely true. There's a similar sort of thing between 3 and 4 year courses. Some universities, you can apply direct for the 4-year course to do a master's, and some others you apply for a 3-year course, but at the end of the first year, or even at the end of the second year, you can then switch and do the 4-year course instead. But again, it's best to just check up on the university websites. Thomas asks, in the interview, did they specifically test your knowledge and skills, or were they just asking about your ambitions and your interest in the course?
I know it was more to do with kind of the knowledge and like content of what I wanted to study, rather than why you're interested and what your ambitions were. But that could have just been more of an Oxford thing. I know perhaps other universities might be a bit more broad, but yeah, it was not so much about why you wanted to be there, because if you'd reached that point, like funneled, if you can imagine, so many people apply and so many people do the admission test and so many people get to the interview stage, they'd kind of know at that point, like, you want to be there, and but obviously that's kind of more of a like Oxford Cambridge thing maybe. So yeah, no, I didn't get asked about ambitions. It was more kind of course content and things like that.
I mean, I think that's generally true, that the more competitive the university, the more likely they are to just test your skills and knowledge. And at the lower end, if they ask for interviews, it's more to check, is this the right course for you? I think as the years have gone on, fewer universities bother having interviews if all they're doing is to just check that you want to go there. I think nowadays they sort of take that as read. I mean, I know when I went to my university interviews, I went to Southampton for interview, even though I live just around the corner. They took me on a tour, and so I thought, I got on the bus going around the shops that I would normally go shopping in on a Saturday anyway. And then my interview was really just a chat. And there was a couple of technical questions, but really they were just checking, were you right for the course? And that's the sort of thing that nowadays I think they do a lot less of. Okay, Isabel says, not an academic question, but how do you find living in Oxford? What's it like there? What opportunities does the university give regarding getting to know others and socialising?
I personally love Oxford. Like, the city itself is just really like beautiful. In terms of getting to meet other people, in case you're not aware, so Cambridge and Oxford, and I think Durham actually, have a kind of what they call collegiate system, where the university, it's not kind of one central campus. There's lots of different colleges sort of dotted around the city, and when you apply, there's a chance to either apply to a specific college, or you can kind of be randomly assigned to a college, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. But once you get to like your college that you'll be staying and living in, and kind of some of the teaching is offered there, I'd say that in terms of socializing, you do meet a lot of people in college, so people who either will be doing different courses, but because you're kind of living together, I'd say definitely that's an opportunity. And then in terms of other things like extracurriculars, in non-COVID times, like before lockdown in November, I was doing things like rowing and like different societies that I was part of, and that's obviously an opportunity to meet people from different colleges, but also doing different subjects as well. So there's lots of different ways to meet people. So yeah, don't worry about like meeting people and things like that, because you'll find people that you get on with. So
Oliver asks, this is always a question that I struggle with answering, so maybe you might be able to help me with this one, Catherine. How do you choose a college?
So it's definitely a hard one. I think the things that I considered was, is there a kitchen? Like, do you have access to a kitchen? Because some colleges, I tell you what, there's a website called, I think it's called the Alternative Prospectus. If you Google that, and basically it has like summaries of each of the colleges, and kind of, do they have, you can filter, there's like a filter option, and you can put in kitchen or live in for all 3 years. So there's like different factors to consider. So is there a kitchen? Is it ensuite? Does that college offer you accommodation on site for all 3 years, or do you have to live out in second year? Or, you know, there's different factors. What else? How close is it to your faculty? So for example, if you put on like Google Maps, like, oh, medical science building to the college, and then you could just kind of look at it that way. So lots of different factors. One thing I would say is, don't stress too much about really wanting to go to a certain college, because I actually applied to one college and then got an offer from a different one. So you know, it's not kind of done on a, if it's oversubscribed at one and undersubscribed at another, then all of the people at the undersubscribed one will get in. The system is done so that if there's a really good candidate over here, they won't make that disadvantage. Like they'd rather have all of the kind of, not good people, but yeah, all of the brilliant people applying than having the people who applied to the undersubscribed college just because it was undersubscribed, if that makes sense. So I'd say different factors to consider, but don't worry and don't stress too much, because wherever you go, you will end up enjoying it. So
yeah, so I mean, I think what you're saying in one respect is, don't try and play the numbers game in terms of trying to pick a course and a college that is very unpopular just because it gives you an increased chance of getting in, because it probably doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
And there's no substitute for actually, if and when you are able, actually going to Oxford or Cambridge and visiting the place just to see what it's like. I've been lucky enough to go to Cambridge a few times now, and my wife lives near there, so we've sort of like been there on sort of shopping trips and things, and so I know more about Cambridge than I do about Oxford. However, you know, it's really, you need to go there and wander around and just get a feel for what the place is like, and think, you know, is this somewhere I would like to spend 3 or 4 years studying? I mean, having said that, get the prospectus, because, you know, there are some colleges that have that are different. So there are some, I think, some still female-only colleges.
No, I'm at yeah, they stopped it about 10 years ago. So I think
really?
It's all yeah, it's all mixed, except for there's I think one, but that's not a college, it's a PPH, so it's like a small hall kind of thing. So but I think on the whole it's mixed, so don't worry too much about that.
But I do think that they do have some colleges that favour or have more mature students. So you know, so but read the prospectus and see what it says about them.
Yeah.
Right, Thomas says, I'm reading exactly what he says. You can paraphrase it for yourself. He says, were you confused between Oxford and Cambridge, and what helped you make your final decision? I'm guessing it says, rather than confused, I'm sure you know the difference between Oxford and Cambridge. How did you choose between Oxford and Cambridge? Because obviously you're only allowed to apply to one of them.
So it was like, one of the main reason was because Cambridge don't offer biomedical sciences. They offer natural sciences, which you apply to, and I think you do biology, chemistry, or physics. And I didn't want to do natural sciences. I wanted to do biomedical sciences. So that was kind of the main reason. And then the second reason was because I'd visited Cambridge before and I'd visited Oxford before. And for me, I personally just preferred the city of Oxford itself, and it's closer to kind of home. So that was my reasons. But the main one was just because Cambridge didn't offer my course, so it kind of made my life easier.
Yes, I mean there is a definite difference between the courses offered. So you will find that for some subjects it makes no difference, but for some other subjects there are different actual courses offered by the two. Certainly makes very little difference for you, Thomas, but for others, maybe for local students, travel to Oxford is considerably easier and shorter than travel to Cambridge. Which may or may, if there's no other difference between the two, it might be a difference. And in terms of the application process, pretty much identical. Cambridge have slightly more tests than Oxford, I think, or is it the other way around?
I think it's the other way around. I think
it's the other way around. Oxford have more tests than Cambridge, I think, don't they?
Yeah.
Oxford have slightly more tests than Cambridge, and because of that, because you're going to be doing a test, they maybe interview slightly fewer people than Cambridge interview, because in Cambridge have slightly less data on which to base their decision in that respect. But then, of course, that means that Oxford are more, if you get an interview, Oxford make more offers per interview than Cambridge do. So at Cambridge, it's easier to get an interview, but then harder to pass the interview. At Oxford, it's harder to get an interview, but easier to pass the interview. And overall, it works out exactly the same.
Yeah.
So in the long run, it's really going to make no difference in that respect. But and from the college's point of view, our success rates with both are fairly similar. I mean, obviously you can talk to your teachers a bit more, come and see me if you want to, because I've got a little bit of past data on, certainly on the science side of things. But the numbers of students we have applying and being successful, we've not really got enough data to suggest that there's any significant difference between applying to the two. So it's whatever you think is best for you, I think. Right, we appear to have exhausted all the questions in the chat. So I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I'm not seeing anything else appearing. Okay, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to mention to sort of finish things off, Catherine.
I'd just say wherever you apply, and if you're doing a course that you enjoy and it's somewhere that you really want to go and you give it your best shot, that's all you can do. And ultimately, wherever you end up, like, I'm sure you'll enjoy it, so don't stress too much. Just do everything you can and it will work out.
Okay, right, well, thank you very much indeed. I hope all of you have found that useful, and I'd just like to say, yeah, thanks again.
That's all right. Yeah.
And I'm sure, but any questions that you have, I mean, obviously your tutor is there to answer any of your questions as well. If I'm your tutor, then we will be starting to think about personal statements after Easter, and definitely after half term. I like all of my tutor group to have a draft of their personal statement done by the end of the year, so that I can also start to write your reference before the end of the year. So you've got a good head start for the application process when we get back in September, because if you are thinking of applying to Oxford and Cambridge, it has to be done before half term in the autumn. So you have to hit the ground running and be ready to go with a personal statement that's nearly finished, and have done your research on what course and which university you want to go to. Right, I think we're probably done then, aren't we? Brilliant. So thank you very much, Catherine, for coming along, and I hope the rest of you have enjoyed that and found it useful.
Thank you, everyone.